Good evening, Bulls fans. Welcome back. We're 5 days away from a new athletic year, and so I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined by John McWinney from UB Bull Run, and we're kicking off our weekly podcast series that we do, webcast, I guess podcasts are audio, talking Bull Run's Olympic sports. The whole group, us and Tim and Conrad, will also do weekly videos for football, and we've done in the past somewhat frequently for basketball. But we also, every Sunday, John and I talk all the rest of the sports as we do in our articles on Bull Run as well. And so, like I said, we're 5 days away from the start of the year. Women's soccer kicks it off this Friday in Philadelphia against St. Joe's. And so we've been running on the site, if you're a regular reader, preview material for about the last 2 months, both individual previews and team previews. And now it's time to start treating it like regular season stuff because that's here this week. So we're gonna run through. We're gonna run through all the teams. We're gonna run through some stuff that's happened over the summer from UB's Olympic or non-revenue sports, as we normally do, and that'll be our first week. And we'll get back in the groove of doing this every week like we did last year. So John, I'll let you introduce yourself, say what you want to say, and start us off.
All right, well, it's good to be back. I mean, I think this is the first time we've done this since probably before finals week, if I recall correctly, probably way back in April. So it's been almost 4 months. Been about 4 or 5 months since we've done this. So it's nice to be back. I'm actually going back to Buffalo next week, so that'll be fun, and I can actually be on campus and watch some of the teams we're actually going to be talking about. You mentioned first women's soccer starting first. I guess they're probably a good jumping off point. Honestly, even with men's basketball and how well they did last year, the women's soccer team is probably still my favorite team from all of last year and going into this year. Really, for me, they single-handedly got me interested in the sport of soccer. And if anyone who knows me personally before, like this past year, I didn't really have any interest whatsoever in soccer, but then this team started winning and it was really fun to watch and I got into it. So I'm really looking forward to this season. I know we've gone through, we went through about the whole entire roster in the preview, the previews, and then we did the big team preview. And one name that really keeps sticking out in my mind is one of the two impact freshmen. I'm probably going to butcher her name, and I apologize for this. Carissima Catrona.
That's how I'm pronouncing it. That's what I'm going with.
All right, close enough. So I like the whole recruiting thing and analyzing recruiting and all that stuff. And when I saw that she was as good as she was in high school, I immediately thought to myself, okay, you stick. So we lose Katie Roberts. She was a huge offensive producer. Then I thought to myself, well, what if we put in someone that could potentially score even more than her? And I got really excited. And then in the scrimmage against Cleveland State, she had 3 shots on goal within the 30 minutes that she played. And I think that says something right there as to how she's going to be used this season.
Yeah, it's really something that I've harped on is UB women's soccer loses 4 senior starters, all of whom who played a pretty huge role right down the middle of the formation last year. Katie Roberts at forward scored 12 goals. I think was the first person to score double-digit goals for women's soccer since 2003, I think. She was MAC Offensive Player of the Year. Had scored in the past in her career, but really came out and dominated the conference. Went on a run in October, scoring in 5 straight games. Tons of game winners. Behind her in the midfield, Megan Geeson was a central midfielder who was really positionally sound and really good running down loose balls and helping UB maintain their possession advantage. Behind her, more defensive-minded central midfielder was Courtney Mann, who I believe was first-team All-MAC, was really a critical part of UB's defense. She was the most forward-minded of the 5 defensive people. And she is now an assistant coach, volunteer assistant coach for the team. She's a huge loss. Behind Mann, in the middle next to Jackie Hall, who is returning, with Sophie Therian, who is second-team All-MAC. And you just get these, right down the middle, these 4 very responsible, always making good decisions seniors who are gone now. But as you talked about on the front line, at least, some of the new names fit into those slots really well. Carissima Cutrona is a redshirt freshman. She spent her first season of college at Colgate, where she didn't play at all due to injury. And so she still has 4 years of eligibility left. She'll start playing right away. I anticipate that she'll start in that forward role this Friday to start the season. And she, as you said, against Cleveland State, in the 30 minutes that the starters played in the first series, she put 3 shots on goal, which Katie Roberts averaged something like 3.2 shots per game over the whole season last year, and Cutrona put 3 on in the first 30 minutes. And granted, it was a scrimmage exhibition, but that says something. I do have some concerns. I'm not entirely certain that Cutrona is the same player as Roberts. Cutrona is more Selena Carrero's height and size than Roberts, who really played a strong hold-up game where once she got possession of the ball, she could maintain it. And Roberts would really go and work down the middle and receive a pass and dribble around and work to get a high-quality shot. But she was able to get that pass and draw multiple defenders and still get a shot off. And I assume that Cutrona is able to do that too, but I don't think that it's going to be a simple in-and-out swap where we just put Cutrona into that role and Selena Carrero still works in a more creative role on the forwards and everything else is exactly the same. Right behind her, filling Megan Geeson's spot, I think Moira Petrie is another, it's another name you want to know. She is a sophomore. She's also a transfer. She comes to UB from Alabama. She played in, I think, a dozen or so games, starting 7 or 8 at Alabama. I should know that. But she was a highly, highly in-demand recruit coming out of the Philadelphia area in high school. And I had thought that there'd be a bit of a positional battle there between her and some of the midfielders who last year came in as substitutes, but some people have moved around in the formation, and she started in that role against Cleveland State. And given that Andrea Kniper in particular has been moved back to defense, I think that spot is hers. And she, I think, brings a little bit more creativity than Megan Geeson did, but I think that also the responsibility is there. And so just talking about, you brought up Cutrona, and that's what I've got on this. I think at least in the attacking roles for women's soccer, it's really easy to pencil in the front 5. Carrero led the conference in assists last year, scored 6 goals, and I thought she could have scored 9 or 10. She got unlucky sometimes. And then on the wings of the midfield, Cassidy Kidd and Julia Benatti, they play responsible attacking soccer. They get into space and they're able to create from there. They're each willing to shoot when they get an opportunity. And so that front 5, the kind of more attacking-minded folks, I feel really good about. Defensively, John, I've mentioned that UB's replacing Courtney Mann and Sophie Therian, and I waver pretty quickly between confidence and uncertainty there. Part of the problem is that there's a number of ways that Coach Burke could fill the holes. They could do it. He can move people who were starters last year into more central roles and fill in from the bench or from the freshman group to those more wider roles, or he could do a combination. We've already seen he's moved a couple positions, as I said, Andrea Kniper back to defense. I'll talk more about the exhibition and that if you like, but I want to give you a chance to say what you might say on the defense for women's soccer and what you think of that.
As far as the defense, I can understand. I'm kind of echoing you hearing that.
You're okay to me.
I can hear. Oh, there we go. That's better. I'm gonna back up. Yeah, I can see your concern with the defense and how you could think it'd be uncertain, but I'm gonna leave it up to Coach. There's a reason Coach Burke gets paid the money that he does. I have confidence that he's a smart, creative guy. I'm sure he'll think of something, some sort of lineup combination that's going to work. I don't recall who started. I believe it was one of the freshmen.
No. Well, kind of.
Now I'm drawing a blank.
I had been debating in a prediction of whether he moved experienced starters inside or if he moved bench players in there or freshmen.
Mhm.
And he moved Kristen Markevich into Courtney Mann's spot in that kind of defensive holding place. And then Jackie Hall did not start, which she will. She'll start and she'll dominate all year long as she doesn't get hurt. But he started Andrea Kniper, and Ashley Evans in the center back spots in the middle of the defense. And I suspect that the two of them were there as kind of a tryout for the one open spot in those center backs. On the edges of the defense, Angel Hart started in her role that was regular last year. I thought that either she or Kristen Markevich would move into the middle in that Courtney Mann spot. So when Markevich did, I wasn't too surprised. And then he started Brianna Shingari on the other edge of the defense, which she's a freshman. She was listed as a forward in the recruiting, material and in the new roster updates and things like that until this scrimmage. Watching highlights of her, she's someone who plays fast, plays with her head up, and is always moving and has really great energy. And that can be really useful on the back line, turning loose balls and gaining possession back and turning it into a quick offensive-minded looking upfield. And so I wonder if she showed well enough that they felt that they had to find a way to get her on the field. And that's kind of the solution, is to put her back there. If so, I'm okay with that. I'd rather there be experience in the middle. And if you're going to put youth in there, or I shouldn't say youth, but freshmen or new players in there, work them on the edges first. Of course, last year's exhibition against Cleveland State, he started Alex Lambert in that role, and she was listed as a defender all last year and came in as a attacking midfielder forward sub in all of her 20 appearances. So I don't know. I'm not too worried. Hall is good enough, and there's enough returning there from the system. There's enough returning defensive responsibility that I'm not wildly concerned about who it is. I'm just interested to see what the ed ends up being. I think it was very lucky last year that UB started almost the exact same lineup. I think 20 games out of their 22. There was the season opening lineup against St. Bonaventure, and then Dana Little got hurt 20 minutes into it, and that kind of reshuffled things. And from then on, there was the starting lineup, and Laura Dougal missed a game, and once or twice somebody. But once they got to the beginning of October, end of September, the lineup was exactly the same for the rest of the year. And so it's just weird to have uncertainty about it. That's what I have to say about that. I don't know if you have more on women's soccer.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the Courtney Mann coming on as an assistant coach. Well, we have as well as a volunteer assistant coach. Well, there's actually another new assistant coach. Kim Brandeo left, as well as you know, as anyone that's watching might not know. She left to become the head coach at Wisconsin Green Bay. Coach Burke went out and hired Molly Rouse, and she comes to UB from Alabama State, where she was an assistant, and before there, she was an assistant at Shattuck St. Mary's in Minnesota, one of the top prep schools in the nation. So she brings a lot of experience, different experiences from top prep program, which UB has actually tapped into that pipeline a little bit, which
quite a bit actually. I think don't mean to cut you off. Mackenzie White, senior goaltender, is from Shattuck. Women's soccer player, in addition to her, had been from Shattuck. On the men's side, Daniel Warner, a freshman midfielder, played at Shattuck St. Mary's after playing at Starpoint in Western New York for a bit. Now departed Abdullah Al-Khalisi went there. There's another women's name or two from the last 4 or 5 years. UB's really developed a connection there, and they are, like you said, they're a top prep program. They're better known for their hockey program. Sidney Crosby played there. I think Phil and Amanda Kessel played there. I could be wrong. Sidney Crosby played there.
I believe that's where the Kessels played. Was there?
And it's a very high achieving school in kind of their areas of focus. And so Molly Rouse coming from there she's coming from places that are used to high levels of achievement. Kim Brandow had been with the program for a long time, and she's now running her own team at Green Bay, and it'll be a shame to miss her. I think she was really well liked by the team. As things go, if we're talking about losses and transition in a championship team, and 10 minutes in, we're getting to an assistant coach, I think we're feeling pretty good about the team as a whole.
Yeah.
They're going to score. They only scored 3 goals once last year, but they still put up 33 goals on the season, which was the most in 8 or 10 years. And 8 or 10 years ago, the MAC was a much, much higher scoring league. 35 goals or so would have been an average team output 10, 15 years ago. Last year, they were not the highest scoring team in the MAC, but they score plenty. They're going to score more. The defense is still fine, even without Jackie Hall starting. They only gave up 1 very soft, very long-range shot with the starting group in against Cleveland State in the exhibition. And that's kind of everything I have right now. If you're watching and interested, you can go on the site and find all our preview stuff from it. But they're the first to kick the season off on Friday and Sunday. Fridays against St. Joe's in Philadelphia, Sundays against Drexel, also in Philly. I'm going to be there. I'm delighted enough taking a bus up from DC to Philly to watch the games, and so we'll have some live coverage of the start of the season. And they're looking to defend their MAC title, and the MAC coaches poll should be coming out soon, and I fully expect them to be top 2 or 3, if not number 1. I think number 1 is probably the most likely ranking for them in the MAC poll. That's coming out soon. So
yeah, so you'll be at the both the St. Joe's and the Drexel games. Well, then depending on the timeline for next week, I may be able to get to the at Canisius game. If not that, I will be kind of taking over the live coverage of women's soccer for the home game. So I'll probably be the first one I'll be at is the home game against Syracuse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and noon Sunday games are really tough for me. So the more noon Sunday games you can make it, the better for both of us. Let's put that out there now. We should talk about that offline and not on our webcast.
So before we move on to something else, I know we talked a little bit beforehand about predictions, and I have made it no secret whatsoever that my big bold prediction for the fall is that women's soccer repeats as MAC champions. I said that months ago. I'm going to say it in another upcoming post, which keep an eye out for that. And I'm saying it here and now, so you can see me saying it. Women's soccer will repeat as MAC champions.
All right,
that's
John,
my big bold prediction.
John is not a Buffalo born and bred fan like I am. I really like the women's soccer championship because it was a championship, and I still can't shake my Buffalo don't wish for too much, don't expect for too much mentality, which is maybe not every Buffalonian's mentality, but it's what I've learned from sports growing up in Western New York. My prediction that I'm going with a little more individual. I'd be happy to make a team-wide prediction, but I feel a little more confident in this. I think Selena Carrero scores 9 goals this season, at least. She, like I said, scored 6 last season, 7 assists, led the MAC. She was wildly underrated, second team All-MAC, but just absolutely dynamic on the ball. There are plenty of times where 2 people come to cover her, and she still ends up with the ball in space, having gotten past them. I thought she was unlucky because of a few close offside calls and a few near misses to have only 6 goals last year. I think she scores 9 goals at least. That's my prediction for women's soccer. We should move on because it's already 10:30. And if you can't tell, we really like women's soccer, the 2 of us. But we should move on to other folks. So you pick.
Well, we could stick with soccer. Move over to the men's side. Guess we could start out with we talked about coaching changes. There was a coaching change there as well. Stuart Riddle brought in Davy Carmichael, I believe is his name. He's a fellow New Zealander. They played together before. Riddle is very familiar with him. I believe Carmichael spent his time
Division 2
at Lake Erie College, which I believe that's a smaller.
Yep, it's Division 2. He really did a multi-year turnaround of that program. I don't know how far they advanced in playoffs and things, but I think either his first year or the year before him, they only won 1 game. And his last year, do not quote me on this, which I should look it up and I should have had it ready, but I think his last year they went 14-5-2.
11-5-2.
11, okay, John's quicker than I am. 11-5-2, which he built up the program there. He's already familiar with Riddle. They played together when they were players. He comes in. I don't know if he replaces Ben Fredrickson, who left for another job, or Kevin Brenner, whose departure has been a little hush-hush. But UB dropped 2 coaches and picked up him. Cody Camp is still around. Team manager Roger Lane is still around. Kevin Brenner actually went to Lake Erie. He picked up that job, and so I'm interested to follow him and Kim Brandow at Green Bay that we were talking about. I don't know. I know enough about soccer to host a podcast on it, to write about it multiple times a week. For UB, I don't really know enough to talk about coaching contributions outside of just tactics and things. So I don't know, but from some of the more soccer-minded folks in the area, Nick Mendola has gotten in touch and said he really likes that move. I'm hoping to set up a conversation with him in the next week or so, and so maybe we'll have more to say when that comes. Getting off the sideline, this is the year for men's soccer. It might not be a championship year because Akron and West Virginia are very, very good. But this is the year that men's soccer is going to take a step forward and really establish themselves as something. They won 3 games 2 years ago, 5 games last year, and all of a sudden everyone is back, and everyone up and down the lineup and up and down the bench has experience. They only graduated 3 seniors last year, only one of whom got, 2 of whom, the starting goalie and then a regular midfielder. Riddle's brought in huge recruiting classes and built up all this young experience. And the name that you know from men's soccer, if you know any name, is Russell Cicerone from Michigan. He's been with Buffalo for 2 years. He's absolutely dynamic. He scored 16 goals in his first 2 seasons. He's a junior now. So between him and all the experience around him, this is the year for them to step up and become a team that puts people on notice that in 2016, they're going to be wildly experienced. They're going to start juniors and seniors at every spot in the lineup that year and really challenge for a MAC title, even against perennially ranked Akron, who I think is slowly descending from their glory days. They started the season ranked 25th this year, which there was a time when they were ranked in the top 10 for whole years at a time recently. So the MAC may be becoming more winnable. UB's got a ton of firepower. There's Cicerone. There's Marcus Hansen, Canadian forward. He's a senior this year, who's just a big-bodied guy who can corral a ball and turn it into possession. They bring in a really attractive transfer at the forward crew in Scott Doney, who's the 6'5". I assume that he's good at other things, but I just imagine Scott Doney as running into the middle of the field and just jumping high in the air and being 8 feet above everyone else and heading the ball into the net, kind of like spamming a single strategy on a video game. But I don't think there's anyone else in the MAC who's 6'5" playing a forward role. And on their spring tour, they went to England, men's soccer did, and then played 5 games in Western New York as well. I think he scored 5 goals. Cicerone scored 10. I think Doney scored 5. He's going to completely change how UB soccer runs in the offense, just because he's too big for the defenses to ignore. And so much like the women's team, the offense is kind of really easy to get a handle on. The specific shape of the formation is maybe up for debate, but the big names are still there. Senior Marcus Hansen, junior Russell Cicerone, sophomore transfer Scott Doney, who played at Marshall his first season. John, your turn to talk about men's soccer.
Right. Yeah, Murray wrote in the actual season, our season preview, that it was a question: is it top 3 or bust this year? And I don't know nearly enough about soccer. I don't know nearly as much as you do. That's as far as the X's and O's of soccer go. I will be the first to admit that I don't. But just empirically looking at the team, you mentioned this as well, that everyone is coming back, and it all looks very exciting on paper. And I think it's just a matter of that translating from on paper, yes, everyone is coming back, everyone is more experienced, but will this translate into more wins during the season? And they came on pretty hot towards the end of the season last year, and I really hope that carries over into this season. One thing that I am just a wee bit concerned about, even though Waleed Cassis, the goalkeeper from last year, didn't have a great year. It was a bit of a down year for his junior year. He is gone, and they are searching for a new netminder. That's really where my big question mark with this team is who is the one in between the pipes, and is that person going to be consistent enough to where Russell Cicerone doesn't have to score 5 goals every game to keep the team competitive? And there are a couple interesting names. The most interesting, I think, is Joseph Kuda, I believe is how you say his last name. He played his freshman year at Robert Morris before transferring here to UB. Little fun fact about him: while he was at Robert Morris, he played against UB, and they beat UB. That was, believe, was Stu Riddle's first year at the helm, and then you bring him in, and by all accounts, he had a decent goals against average. Started all but 1 game, went 7-7-2. He has collegiate starting experience, so I think he might be the guy. There are a few other names. I know Cameron Hogg is probably the other guy that will be challenging for time. So what are your thoughts on the goalkeeper battle there?
Yeah, I agree with you. Cassis's senior year was not exceptional. It wasn't as good as his junior year, but he had experience from, I think he played Division II for his first 2 years at Cal State LA. And he was a keeper, he was an experienced keeper. Cameron Hogg came in as this New Zealand guy with a little bit of international experience. It seems that everyone that Coach Riddle draws from New Zealand has some international experience, which is good. And Hogg got some time last year in an exhibition and in a few of the opening games. And after the first 4 or 5 games, Walid Cassis played every minute. And so I don't really have a read on Hogg. Huda I've never seen play. I don't really know what I don't know what he brings to the table, but I know what his numbers are from RMU, and he started there at Robert Morris for for his freshman season. I think he started 80 or 90% of their games, and so he's got that experience. And I don't remember his numbers right now. I didn't look them up, but if I remember, they were better than what UB's defense went for last year. And obviously, defense starts 40 yards in front of the goalie, if not further. If your defense isn't working, there's only so much that a goalie can do. But right now, if I had to bet, I would think Kuda is the starter. But that's really only on the basis that he has more in-game collegiate experience than Cameron Hogg. They had their first scrimmage today. They beat Hartwick 1-0 on a goal from Russell Cicerone, and I haven't seen the recap from that yet. I guess I'll go look for that now. I don't know who started there. Hartwick was the Sun Belt champion last year. They're a former MAC team. They moved to the Sun Belt when West Virginia came in, and it worked out for them. They went and won their conference. And I don't know how much. I don't put a lot of stock in exhibitions, but whoever was in goalie shut them out. I don't know who it was. The Twitter wasn't terribly informative, and there's no recap on the site. I think it's Kuda in that they don't start their season till the 28th, I think, 1 week after the women, and they open with home games against Seton Hill and Belmont. Between now and then, they'll play Syracuse in an exhibition and Rochester. They played Rochester last year in an exhibition too. Syracuse is ranked in the top 15 right now. ACC soccer is the best in the country, and Syracuse has taken advantage of the move to that conference with their Olympic sports. Again, don't know how much weight to put in exhibitions, but it'll be interesting to see what they do there. If Cicerone scores a couple goals, it won't be anything new. We know that he's really good, but it'll be good to see against a ranked team. He is that good. Otherwise, for men's soccer, as I said, they return a ton of experience. They're gonna have guys subbing in and only getting 25 minutes a game who would have started every game and played the full games 2 years ago. They're just how much they've improved to the rest of the MAC is the question. That's why I say top 3. You know, I'm expecting top 3 this year, not necessarily because I feel that the Bulls are better than Western Michigan, but I think they need to put themselves in position for next year. This year and then 2016, 2017 are going to be real big years for the program, just because so many players are going to be upperclassmen through these next few years, especially amongst the defense. UB's got 3, 4, 5 guys who have 20 or more starts coming into their junior season, or 15 or more starts coming into their sophomore season. And that's just a ridiculous amount of experience for them to have already. And so I'm really looking forward to them capitalizing on that. Like you said, John, they came out really strong at the end of the year. The month of October, they had a game against Division III Houghton that they won. Fine, it's Houghton. But then they tied Bowling Green, or they tied Northern Illinois. They tied Western Michigan. They lost a very unlucky game, a road game against Lafayette, which I don't know how good Lafayette was, but I was able to watch the game, and it was a very good game. And they were unlucky to lose. They had a late goal. Then they beat Bowling Green. They beat the Tar out of St. Bonaventure. And they really had a good run there, and it was noticeably better. There were games early in the season against Canisius and Bucknell that I remember that the team that played in October would have won the games that they lost in September. And so that was really encouraging to see over the course of a season. And based on what we saw this spring, they're going to be able to score. They're going to be able to take their game to other teams versus being a little more reactionary like they were last year. You got a prediction for them? Should I start?
I I don't really know how to judge. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule, and because the MAC has so few teams
Hmm.
in it compared to women's soccer, I think they're going to have more wins. They're definitely going to have more than 5 wins this season. Um, are they top 3 in the MAC? Maybe. I mean, if they come in, if they're 4th in the conference, I'm not going to be totally disappointed by it. Um, I know your expectation is probably a little bit higher than mine.
Yeah, I mean, fourth in the conference gets them into the tournament, and that's good. They were in position going into the last 2 games last year to get into the tournament, and their last 2 games were road games against Akron and West Virginia, the best 2 teams in the conference. And Russ got hurt, and Bowling Green slipped by them. Um, top 4 would get them in the tournament, but would likely draw Akron in the semifinal. I would love to see them get 3rd and draw West Virginia in the semifinal, and maybe get a shot at at a MAC championship game with a little bit of zip. This year, all the MAC games wait for the end of the season. Last year, there were a couple other games interspersed in them, but they're only going to play. They finished the season with 7 games over the course of 7 weeks. It's going to really slow down, and I think that could help too. Through the month of September, they're playing twice every weekend, and then once they hit October, they play at St. Bonaventure on the 3rd, Akron on the 9th, West Virginia on the 16th. They're going every weekend, so there's space there. I think they'll finish 3rd in the MAC. I wasn't able to watch the Western Michigan game last year where they went down 2-0 and came back in the last 10 minutes for a tie. And I don't really know who Western Michigan has lost, but they were better than Bowling Green and Northern Illinois last season, and I expect them to be better than Western Michigan this year. And so I'm looking number 3 in the MAC. That's kind of my prediction for them. We're already at 35 or 40-ish minutes, so we should be mindful of that. The other really notable team in the fall is volleyball. There's also, we'll talk about cross country for a moment, and then rowing and tennis also get going, but it's a lot harder because their main season is the spring. So we'll probably pass up on them for now and until things start actually happening with rowing and tennis. The school website hasn't even updated there, so beyond what we know, it's tough to make a prediction or look at a schedule or anything. But the kind of the 3rd main sport among the Olympics is volleyball, and volleyball is a program that just can't catch a break. Really, they're on their 3rd coach in 3 years. They only graduated 2 seniors last year, but they actually have an okay group of seniors. But they only graduated 2 seniors last year, and it still feels like they're going to be breaking in a lot of new players this year because folks transferred out with the coaching turnover. I'll give you a chance to talk first, John. I don't know what really catches your eye about volleyball. There's reasons in multiple different areas to feel good about things, and reasons to feel wary about things. But I'll let you kick it off if you like.
Yeah, I'm kind of mixed on volleyball. I have optimism just from what I've read on Twitter and what people have said about Coach Blair Brown, how excited they are and how energetic the practices are, and people, around the team are excited, about things going in. Blair Brown herself, I kind of compared her hiring to that of Bobby Hurley, where you're bringing in someone who has reached the pinnacle collegiately of their sport, has won it all, has done about just about everything you could do at the NCAA level, and she comes from the best program in the country, from Penn State, where she won 4 national titles, and maybe we don't see the success year one, and this gets to my point where I'm not as optimistic, is that the first month just about the first month of the season is all on the road, and it starts off against the number one team in the nation in Penn State, and then I believe another top 10 team, Washington, and they're both away. Plus, there's just a multitude of other bigger name teams that they'll be facing, and it's going to be a real test to this team's their will and how they're able to come together against all of this adversity. And they're going to be tired. They're going to be sore, and we'll see what type of heart this team really has and what type of confidence that Coach Brown can instill in them to fight through it and play their hardest. So it's a real mixed bag with my personal feelings on it. I'm excited based on the coaching hire and some of the recruits that she's brought in already. I'm tempering myself based on the schedule and just how absolutely brutal it is for the first month.
Mm-hmm. Well, wow, we're really opposites on this one. I don't care much about the schedule this year. The last 2 years, volleyball has started out very strong through September. 2 years ago, they started out 12-0, and I think we're 15-2 to start the season after losses to Ohio and Ohio State. Last year, they weren't quite that good, but they won 2 tournaments of their 4, and I think lost out on winning their third one by a tiebreaker, a kind of convoluted. They very nearly won 3 of their 4 tournaments last year. And so the schedule is the schedule. They're going to go out and play some real big programs in Penn State and Washington. They don't have a home match until the MAC season. And then the MAC is the MAC. Last year they finished 8th in the MAC and got into the conference tournament, and that was a banner year. Last year they were 17-15 overall, and it was their second straight winning season, and that's a big deal. It's the first time it had happened in 10 years. And so to look at, who amongst the MAC schedule is home and away and where are they drawing the better and worse teams, I put less stock in that. And just the schedule as a whole, the margins that this team is going to be working in and that my expectations are at, the schedule doesn't play a big role there. I'm not wildly enthused about the coaching hire. Blair Brown had a tremendous career, and I do hope it works out, and I think it could. But I don't know anything about her. Bobby Hurley was a coach's son, and that was a big deal. He had spent some time coaching. Blair Brown she's run her camps, and I don't know how big of a role camps fit into kind of the volleyball world. But it's not even like she's coached a club team outside of a college or high school group. And certainly she's very good at volleyball. She played for a great team under a great coach, and there's something to be brought over there. But I'm not assuming that she's going to be a very good coach because she's had a very good career up till now. And I know that you're not either. I'm just less excited about it. Where I kind of get my ambivalence is just based on who's returning and where on the court kind of the strengths and weaknesses are. And there are spots where UB is returning a ton of talent and bringing in some exciting talent. And then there's one spot in particular where the roster has really been gutted and a bunch of new faces are not only going to have to step up, but they're going to have to step up from day one. UB's blocking game and up front, they're kind of tall players that are the first line of defense, is going to be very strong. It was quite strong last year compared to the rest of the MAC. And everybody's back. They've got 2 seniors in Amber Hatchett and Akila Lane, who are real good and can both turn offensively minded pretty quickly. And then their lone entry on the MAC all-freshman team last year, Cassie Shadow, likewise will play up front. And I think that if UB can find a way to keep all 3 of them on the court at a time, if you look through kind of our lineup prediction posts from about a week ago, we think that Akila Lane could move outside of the middle blocker role into a role that involves some attacking. That could be really good for UB. There real kind of defensive specialist and serving side folks who spend more of their time on the back line and are corralling in the opposing team's attacks returns a lot. Nikki Bozanowski played every set as a freshman libero last year. She's back. The setters are back. Marissa Prinsback and Megan Lynn are back. Tessa Oyama, all the servers. UB returns its 5 top servers from last year. There's room there for the defense. And then there's some exciting names coming in. Madison Clark is a Western New York girl who won a state championship with Will South. And not only is she listed as a setter, but she's 6'2", second tallest on the team. And so when you look at the setters, Megan Lynn is 5'9". When she gets rotated around to the front of the net, that causes some problems. Marissa Prinsbach is 5'11". That's a little better. But Clark is 6'2", and she kind of did it all in high school, and she's got the height to maybe do it all in college. And so that's a name that should make an appearance pretty quickly as a freshman. Abby Beecher is another name that should make an appearance as a freshman at a unit of strength. She's kind of a defensive specialist, libero type as well. And she had originally been committed to Syracuse, which again, with ACC kind of power stuff. She was originally going to Syracuse, and I'm not sure what happened that she ended up with us, but she looks like someone, she's from Rochester, Penfield, who could make a contribution real quickly. The big question, though, is the hitters, where is UB going to find their points? Talia Bishop had one more year of eligibility before Reed Sunahara left the team, so she was already on her way out. And when I talk about UB graduating only 2 seniors, only one of whom saw the floor and still hurting for depth at outside hitter, this is where I'm talking about. UB should have Talia Bishop for a senior year this year, and she's one of the most productive players in the MAC for the last 2 seasons, and now they don't. She transferred away. Her replacement last year, when she was injured or being held on the bench for whatever reason, Skylar Day, who came on as a freshman real strong at the end of the season, has also transferred away and left. Sable Stoller graduated. She had missed a few years to injury and had a real good all-around season last year. She's graduated. And so UB's really left with Megan Lipsky and a bunch of freshmen for hitting. And we can list their high school, accomplishments and what they did. But Valisha Watkins and Raven Jordan, they're going to play. Megan Wernette is kind of a hybrid middle blocker hitter type, it seems. She'll probably play to some degree. I don't know how much she'll get in the middle, but she can hit. She had a ridiculously efficient hitting percentage in high school. That's kind of the place where I worry is, where is UB going to find their points? Because you've got to score points to win. And so it's, just like John said, I've talked for a while now, I think. But just like John said, you've got this back and forth on volleyball. There's reasons to think somewhat positively, and there's reasons to say there are some really big holes to fill. And they were, they finished 8th in the conference last year, 6-10 in the conference after starting. I think they started 4-2, and they really slid for a long time and always just had this barely little hold on a conference tournament spot, and they just barely got into the conference with two wins in their last two games. And so even that was a really good season, and considering who's back, who's lost, it's just there's a lot of questions around volleyball right now, but there's a lot of reason to be, you could make a positive or a negative out of almost anything going on there. I need to stop talking and let you say what you might want to say further.
One last thing before we get away from volleyball is UB is actually going to start charging for volleyball again, which came up not too long ago. And the price is set, I believe it's at $8 a game, and there are no season ticket discounts. So if you buy one to go to all the games, you just pay $8 for the 8 home games. Which that's another thing I didn't mention that I was a little disappointed about, that there's only 8 home matches. But $8 to me seems like a little bit much, based on what some of the other teams in the conference are playing, or what some of the other teams in the conference are charging. Excuse me. It just seems like a little bit much for this team. I don't know. What are your thoughts? quick
I
quick
am not
thoughts on that.
necessarily I am not a sports economics guy. I'm not. I didn't really go to volleyball games when they charged in the past. There is something to be said about uh, placing a value on a ticket so that people treat the whole experience with more respect. And that's kind of a loaded word, respect. But if you say that it costs $2 to get into a volleyball game, now there are tickets. I sing in a choir, and when we just do a concert that's, oh, hey, walk in, we're doing a free concert in this room this Sunday night, we get some people. If we sell tickets for $4 a pop, we get many more. Just because once we tell people to come and they agree to come, now they've got a stake invested in it. Or even if they show up at the door, placing that value on it garners more respect from people. And so I think it's a good idea to try and do that. I know that when they charged in the past, they got some very good crowds when Todd Kress was still the coach. That said, yeah, like you said, $8 for volleyball is a little confusing to me. No one else in the conference charges more than $6. Just about every other team in the conference has a season ticket package. I don't know. $8 seems a little high just on a gut reaction. I've said to you offline, volleyball can be over in 70 minutes, and that's including a 15 or 20-minute break after the third set. You could walk in, and if either UB is really creaming the other team, or if UB is getting creamed, a 3-set sweep could be over in 70 minutes. They've also announced that they're going to charge $8 for wrestling. I think that makes a little more sense. Wrestling lasts a little longer. I think UB wrestling has a slightly higher expectations this year and in the next year. I understand why they're doing it. I think it's a good idea. I just think at face value, $8 is a tough number to stomach, and wrestling, I think, is the only, Bonaventure might have wrestling, but I think wrestling is the only D1 wrestling in the area. If somebody wants to go to a volleyball game for free and UB is charging $8, they're now going to go to Niagara or Canisius. And frankly, if I didn't write for this blog and I just wanted to see college volleyball, I would probably make the same choice. So I understand the idea in play. I just think $8 is too much. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference either way on attendance this year, because it's not like UB was getting 600 people and now 300 of them aren't going to show up now that you're charging money. UB was getting 150, 200 people, and they'll probably still get about that much. It's not gonna. Nobody's gonna raise an uproar about it, but I think something's just a little off about that decision with volleyball.
All right. Well, I guess we hit the last teams, the women's cross country.
Yeah. Not much to say there.
Yeah, I mean they run much faster than I can.
Yes. Yeah, they run, and they run their races, and they finished. There's more to say than there would be for rowing. We've talked in the past about how we just don't know how to cover rowing, because all there really is to say is that these girls got in a boat and ran the race, and this is where they finished. And in cross country, there's a little more teamwork. There's more competitions and things. But it's tough to do much of a preview because really all that we're doing is setting 7 people out to go and run as fast as they can and finish quickly. I think both cross-country teams are in for an improvement over last year. At the MET Championships, the women finished 7th for the 3rd year in a row. Over those 3 years, they've improved their point standing. They've still been 7th in the conference, but they've gotten closer and closer to 6th. And they return, they graduate 2 seniors from their top group, but neither of them finished higher than 3rd in any meet for them last season. So they returned their top 2. Amy Shaw is returning. She had a very strong track season in those longer distances. And so between Corinne Burchard, Melinda Wheeler, and Amy Shaw, I think they could have a pretty strong top 3, even having lost Gabby Leo and Chrissy Clarkin last year. Women's soccer, they've slowly been improving. I expect them to be better than 7th. They made a brief inroad to the regional rankings last season after a strong showing at the Iona Meet of Champions in New York City in early October. I just love the name Meet of Champions. But they had a real strong race there and cracked the top 15 in the region, which if you guys don't know, either you, John, or we've got 3 viewers right now. We're really breaking the bandwidth right now. Or whoever's watching this in the future. Northeast is a really strong region for cross country. UB pretty much exclusively draws from New York State, and they can be very successful from there. Some of the girls' high school teams in the Syracuse region are regular appearances at the high school national championship. Same on the men's side. When I talk about the Northeast regional rankings for cross country, we're talking all the Ivies, and then Syracuse, Boston College's women's team is a little stronger than their men's. But all 8 Ivies are represented, and a couple of power conference teams as well. And so it's no joke that they cracked there. I think they'll be better than last year. They graduate 2 seniors. The men graduated no seniors, and I was really, really excited for the men. They missed top 3 in the MAC last season by 1 point. Would have been 3 seconds faster from any one of their runners. They would have been top 3 in the MAC last year. And they return everybody. And they had a lot of guys who finished the season real strong. Their top runner, Cam Bruce, missed the last couple weeks of the season and came into the MAC championship injured, and they still put together a real good race. I was really high on them. They cracked into the regional rankings the week after the women did from the Paul Short Invitational at Lehigh, and they maintained that. I think they finished the season at 12th, but they were 12th or 11th. They stayed in the rankings for the rest of the season. My expectations are a little tempered. It seems that Alec Pinecofer is no longer on the team. He's not listed on the roster. I don't know anything more. But I was really hoping for him to step up and join Cam Bruce as kind of a front runner. A little tidbit that I've brought up a lot is that Coach Witzelbin, the men's coach, has told me that he feels that UB needs to have 2 runners in the top 10 at the MAC championships to have a chance at winning. He thinks any team needs to get at least 2 in that front pack. And I thought that Pinecofer could join Bruce in that role this year. And now he's gone. And much like men's soccer, there's a ton of sophomores and juniors who improved over the course of the year who could step up. And I think the men are still due for to have a long run in the regional rankings. But there's not a whole lot more to say about that. They kind of go and run and do their thing. I think that they do not start their season with the UB Stampede as they normally do this year. I think they have a meet before then.
Yeah, they're at Colgate.
Okay, yeah, they're running that's just a small thing. It's like Colgate and Syracuse and maybe one other team, kind of like the UB Stampede.
Yeah, last year it was just Colgate and Syracuse. They haven't, when I did the preview for it, there was nothing on the Colgate website about who else was going to be there. So at most, it'll be Colgate, UB, and Syracuse. At minimum, it'll just be Colgate and UB.
Yeah, so that's there. The season and kind of the meets that we really care about really kick up in October. Both cross-country teams, I mean, they travel together and go to similar meets. Both cross-country teams have a very ambitious schedule this year compared to last year. The women are, maybe they aren't. Let me, before I say that. I'm not sure if the women are going to the Iona Meet of Champions again.
Yeah, only the women are going.
Oh, they are. Well, that's a women's only meet. But in October, they're going to Lehigh Paul Short again, which is a massive race. On the collegiate scale, it's massive in the whole Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. And then they've got the regular MAC championship scheduled on Halloween at the end of the month. But they're going to spend their middle of October race at in Louisville at the pre-national meet, which happens every year. It's a meet in the middle of the season held at the course for the national championships. That's kind of all I have to say on it. But it's on their radar. I think they've scheduled 1 fewer meet than last year, even including this early race at Colgate. Iona Meet of Champions is a big deal. That's what put the women in the regional rankings last year. Lehigh, Paul Short is a big deal. That's what put the men into the regional rankings last year. And then after that, they only go to the national championship course, and that's their only race for the 3 weeks of October until the MAC championships. And then regardless of how they perform at MAC championships, they'll race at the Northeast Regional Championships in Boston. Franklin Park's a pretty good course. I think it's pretty similar to courses they'd find and be able to run on in Western New York, so there won't be anything ridiculous there. Not a whole lot to say about cross country, but we'll point out that each team is returning a lot of people, and some people who had some very strong track seasons. One or two folks who are gone, it's a little disappointing that they're gone. But all you have to do to think about their chances and what the coaching staff thinks about their chances is to look at that schedule and the fact that they're running fewer races and they're running much higher leverage races. They really think they've got something this year. And next year, this is another team where this year might be the year. They've got decent depth up and down, but I think this is a high point for the men at least. Cam Bruce is a senior. I think Brian Crimmins is a senior as well. I don't remember at the moment. But that's cross country. They're a little tougher to talk about, but we'll always be able to recap them on Sundays after they've raced. They could surprise this year. Both groups could. Cam Bruce could be in the running for a conference championship, individual championship. He might not. I think Willie Fink is still around at Eastern Michigan, and that guy is just ridiculous. There could be some real good news from cross country this year. They're harder to talk about, so they get less attention. But that's them. And like I said earlier in the show, men's and women's tennis also compete in the fall, but their main season is the spring and the fall. It's official competition, but it's more individually minded. We do cover that when it happens, but we don't really know the schedules yet. And we have an idea of what the roster should look like, but the rosters haven't been updated yet. And then rowing also competes in the fall, but their main big meet in the Colonial Athletic Association, they're in a different conference, is in the spring. And we have a real tough time writing cohesively about rowing. There's just not a lot to say. So when they occur, they'll show up, but we're not going to cover them in this first Get Back into Action webcast. With that, we've been going for about our hour. We get into danger zones when we talk for too much longer. John, did we miss anything that you want to say?
Nothing of real significance. I mean, just a few little quick hits from stuff over the summer. There's a new softball coach, Kaylee Rafter, Courtney Gilbert in Team Canada.
Yeah, so those are both softball things. Kaylee Rafter plays on the Canadian national team and competed at the Pan Am Games, and they won a medal. I don't remember if it's gold or not right now. I
believe it was silver. They made it to the gold medal game and they lost. I believe it was a silver medal. Don't quote me on that.
Okay. I know they got a medal. I can pull up her Twitter right now and see what they did. Courtney Gilbert is a name also connected to Team Canada. She's an incoming freshman who made it to the Canadian national junior team, and they're competing in the World Championships right now. They finished second in their round-robin pool play, and in the first round of kind of the playoff lost to the USA. And so I don't know quite what's in store for them, but she's hit real well in that world. We'll talk more about her in the spring. But she's a name that's done something even before she got to UB. Other things, if you missed it over the summer, I really hope you didn't, but John Jones, no longer a student athlete at UB, but he graduated and then won a national championship and then competed internationally at the Pan Am Games where he had an off day, finished fifth, I think, and then competed at another international meet, North America and the Caribbean and Central America, and won that in San Jose, Costa Rica. I think a throw of 20.58 meters, which would be one of his 4 or 5 best throws. Mike Morgan, who has not graduated, represented the USA in an annual USA-Germany decathlon competition called the Thorpe Cup, named after Jim Thorpe. He was the USA's number 2 finisher in that, which means if you account for the three folks who will be representing the USA at the World Championships, that right now puts him over this summer as America's number 5 decathlete, pro or amateur. And so he's looking real good for his senior season. For a while, I thought that Mike Morgan was our best chance at a national championship, and then John Jones went and did his thing. But that's a slight update. We talk about baseball alumni a little bit on the site. I won't go into everybody, but recent not graduate. Nick Sene was a junior this past year, signed with the Blue Jays. He's doing pretty well considering his skill set. He's just kind of a speedster. I think his average is pretty good in single A somewhere. Tim will jump on and tell me what's wrong. But if we didn't cover someone because we didn't do our show over the summer, Nick Sene has made it a professional ball, and he's doing well, and I don't have numbers to throw at you now. But those are things that we missed. There's just not enough news to sustain a show over the summer. But it's August. Next Sunday, we'll have started the 2015 school year, athletic year, I should say. Women's soccer kicks it off with 2 games, and we'll be on the air next Sunday as long as my bus from Philadelphia isn't delayed. It'll be the same time. If not, it'll be a little delayed, and our 3 viewers right now can catch it later as well. After that, men's soccer starts up before August ends, and then volleyball and cross country start up in the first week of September. In the meantime, the full Bull Run crew will be starting our football weekly podcasts this week, actually, before the season opener on September 5th. And so we'll have a couple weeks of preseason run up there. We're really kicking into gear now in Bull Run with the year starting. So I'm Matt Gritzmacher. I'm joined by John McWhinney. Again, we write at ubbullrun.com, the cover University of Buffalo sports. If you've gotten to us here, you know that. Welcome back. It's been a long summer. John and I are very excited to be back and have things to talk about again instead of endless preview materials. Welcome back. Next time we see you, we'll be talking real live UB sports and the start of the women's soccer season. So have a good week, everybody. Oh, that's not how you end that.